Welcome again to Life Bursts. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sarah. Today, another real life story from an incredible woman.
Yes, this is Life Bursts. It is fantastic that you can join us wherever you're joining us from, whether it's community TV, community radio, or online. I am Matt.
And I'm Sarah. Thank you, Amelia, for coming in today.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me.
I'm really looking forward to hearing your story and all your adventures that you've had in between up to this point. But take us back. Where did life start out for you?
Here we go.
Yes, to the beginning.
38 years ago.
Right, there we go. Straight off the bat, we know how old she is.
Yes.
So I was born and grew up in Adelaide, in the kind of northern suburbs. A really lovely family and really happy childhood. And I've lived in Australia really ever since, apart from some travel overseas.
Yeah.
But yeah, where did life start out? Just, I can't even think. Besides Modbury Hospital, where I was born.
Did you grow up with siblings around you?
So I have an older brother and sister. I was an afterthought. My mum really wanted a third. So 5 years after my brother and sister, I was born, which was a blessing to all.
Yes, of course. Of
Yeah,
course it is.
we
Laughing,
can't,
Matt.
Can't argue with that.
we can't say anything different because we don't know
We
your
will
other siblings.
get you-
Oh, well.
We'll get them in and hear their side of the story later. So there was a significant gap between...
So they're 18 months apart. So they were very close. And then I was a fair bit after them. But it was good.
And what was that like, though?
Well, it was good. And I think it was good for my brother because my sister wanted to do her own thing. And I was my brother's kind of little friend that would go along and do everything, including like he could dress me up in army clothes and the full get up, like makeup and everything. And I would go down the river with him and we would army crawl and do all the things. So I would really like hang out with him a lot of the time. There were some questionable interactions between my bigger brother and sister and me, including the time when they would throw bits of fish to me and I would pretend to be a seagull. You know, because when you're the little sister, like anything goes, you know, and anything went for them as well. But it was good. Like they were kind to me and we really have a good relationship now as well. But I liked being the little one. Life was easy because they forged the path.
Right.
For you to go along.
My sister specifically forged the path. So thank
So
you.
were there any times when you got away with things that they would not have got away with?
Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything.
But you earned it, it sounds like.
Pardon?
You earned it.
I
it
did.
sounds
Yeah,
like.
I did. I went through what I needed to go through to earn that privilege of life being very easy. I never got grounded. I got to go to the schools that my brother and sister were kind of had a lot of trouble in, and my parents decided then I got to go to the easier schools. I got to go out and kind of have fun without getting in trouble. I got to but I was probably much better behaved than them as well because I learned from them and my parents learned from them. And then I think most youngest children would agree that life is pretty sweet most of the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm an eldest, but I
are
can
you?
see
So-
that.
Yeah.
I can see you kind of glaring at me going, I know.
I am the eldest too, and
Are
yes,
you?
that's right. Look,
Oh, well, me and my partner Matthew are both the youngest of three, so we both kind of have the easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you get it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned schools. As you got into schooling, did that things change for you? Suddenly you were amongst peers your own age?
Well, yes. School. Yeah. So I guess I was then more on my own when it was school because my brother and sister were already kind of getting on to like high school when I was in primary school. And I changed schools in year 4, which I really loved school. And when I changed schools in year 4, I got really badly bullied. And that was like a real shock to me because I was so excited to go to a new school and suddenly I had no idea. I just didn't understand what was happening, but I was bullied quite severely by the girls. And I think from then I had to like find who I was. And that's taken up to now, really, because I guess we all have those times in our life where we lose a part of ourselves. And I think bullying is probably a fairly common, because I was so young and impressionable, I thought that there was something wrong with me if the girls at school didn't like me.
What were they doing? What were they saying?
Well, things like, I think it was like the first day I went to sit at a desk and they just said I couldn't, just like little things, like looking back, it doesn't seem much, but it's kind of like I couldn't sit there. I couldn't play with them. I couldn't hang out with them. If my things were on their desk, they'd push them away because it was just, and every day I just kind of hoped, like I remember just saying, I hope they're nice to me today because then it would be an okay day. So I think it probably took that whole year. And my parents were worried. My mum spoke to the teachers. The teachers knew what was happening but didn't do anything. So yeah, it was challenging, but I've become the person I am now because of, like, partly because of that, I think. So ended up with really good friends in that school, and yeah, I got through it, but it did really change my kind of experience of schooling, and maybe that's why I homeschool my children now.
There could be children, maybe even young girls that are watching this that might be experiencing that at school, and you might have really just clicked with them to say, okay, well, you're older than me. What do I need to do so that they stop doing this to me? What would you say?
I guess the thing that when I was going through it, I never ever thought that it was anything to do with them. I thought that there was something wrong with me. And so probably the advice I would give if anyone is in that situation, or even for parents that are supporting their children, is to just build their sense of self and know that if children are bullying, it's usually as a result of their own, like they might have a bad home life, or their, children aren't going to bully unless they've been in bad situations themselves. So instead of me thinking I had to do everything different to make them like me, I think, it was probably okay. I had a good family and I had other friends outside of that. But I think your peer group at school is so important that, it did affect me. But I think just having one or two good friends, just getting a bit of perspective of like, it doesn't mean anything about the child that's being bullied. So I think, I can't think what else would be, but it's just, really building that muscle of knowing that it's not the child's worth, and that school is not everything as well. Like, there's so much more than school, and that once you leave school and become an adult, you look back and it's such a little, we feel like it's our whole world when we're at school.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks
so
for sharing.
That is.
So outside of the school setting, as you were young and with your family, your siblings, were you into sport or hobbies? What were the things that you threw yourself into?
So I loved netball.
Yeah.
So I did netball through that school, and that was amazing. Like, I made lots of good friends in there doing netball. I just loved kind of anything like artistic, and I think netball was my thing. We used to play netball on Anzac Highway on a Friday evening in the middle of winter, which was like amazing. I remember you turn up to netball and be absolutely freezing, and then by the end of it, you're like, oh my God, how could I even put a jumper on? Because it's like, like after all the exercise.
Yeah.
But that was just really invigorating. I loved it. I think netball's really the main thing I did outside of, the normal school stuff. I never filled my time up too much. I liked just kind of being at home and like had my little dogs that I'd play with and just, seeing friends and stuff. And
Nothing too stressful.
Nothing too stressful. And I'm still like that. I don't like to fill up my time too much.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of if I enjoy something, I'll do it. And if I'll never push myself too much. I don't stress myself out too much.
That's very good. Well, we will hear more of Amelia's story straight after this on Life Burst with Matt and Sarah.
Thanks for joining us on Life Burst with Sarah and Matt. And we have Amelia in the studio talking through childhood. And as you moved on to your high school years, tell us what was high school like for you?
Well, I guess high school, I was still kind of navigating, who I was and trying to work out where I fit in and where I belonged. And so in high school, I kind of flitted around to all the different groups trying to figure out which one suited me. And I probably ended up, I did enjoy high school, but I ended up kind of befriending maybe like the people that hang out by themselves, like the artists and the people maybe that were new to school, and we would kind of form little groups together. And I actually, so that's
lovely.
Yeah. And then I did kind of have, like part of the bigger groups I would like, but I was never the popular girl, never ever. And I really had to just kind of, it was a lot of figuring out, I think, and I was much more interested in friendships and that than academic pursuits. Although I did love my art and all that kind of thing, but the rest, it was more like a social experiment for me than wanting to actually get somewhere in terms of my academic life.
Yeah. And so then where did you go from? You've just spent 3 years at one high school and then moved to another
So
place.
I was at just a regular public school, and then I just felt a little bit lost there. I think I just felt like there was too many people and I was one of two, a lot. And then my sister, there's a beautiful school in the city called Mewden College, and it used to be a secretarial school. So my great grandmother actually went there, and she, so it's been around for like 100 odd years. I don't know exactly. And then my mum went there.
Wow.
And then by the time my sister went there as well, and it was a college, so year 11 and 12. And then I went into it, and it's this beautiful old building. It still just looks like a house kind of frontage. And you go in there and it's just beautiful. It was all the same kind of fittings, like the black and white tiles, and just gorgeous. And just there was only about 30 students.
Wow. It's a big difference.
And I just loved it. It was very different. And as soon as I walked into it, I knew that it was the place for me. We didn't have to wear uniform. We called all the teachers by name. There was no such thing as getting in trouble and getting detention, because it was the kind of school where we were responsible for ourselves. And I just absolutely thrived there. I just loved it. It was like the best decision I ever made. And it was like my intuition just told me that was the right thing for me. And and I'm really glad that I did do that.
Yeah. And were you able to explore your creativity, that side of you at that school?
Yeah, and because it was such a small school, we were able to they had a beautiful art room, and there wasn't it didn't have much funding. We didn't have a lot there, but what we had, we could just it was about us being creative. I remember we painted the art room door, and we could just do things that it was almost like a big family, and for our geology camp, the reason I chose geology, because I don't really have a huge interest in rocks, although was that I knew we'd go on a camp and we'd go in, the teacher would just there was just a group of us and we'd all fit in the back of her, what is it, a fanny kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we'd head off, and that was the camp. It was just the funnest thing ever. Again, it was it wasn't a academic thing for me. It was just, where was I going to have the most fun? And that high school was good.
Yeah, sounds brilliant. And as you got to towards the end of that, was there pressure to think about what you would like to do after that? Where are you going to be? Who are you going to be? Geologist?
So that's interesting, actually, because again, even in year 12, when everyone started kind of thinking about what uni they wanted to go to and doing all that, I remember sitting in the library and I was like, nah, I don't want to go to uni. It was just this feeling in me that I didn't have that urge in me to do it. And so there was I knew that if I tried, it just wouldn't feel right. I knew maybe there was something else. I didn't really understand that that's what I was doing. I just knew it wasn't right. And I didn't even bother filling out the paperwork or anything. I just knew that there was something else in store for me. So no, I didn't I passed, and that was fine. I had fun. But for me, I had other things, other adventures to go on.
What were they? Take us on that journey.
Oh, well, I think the first thing I did was went on a road trip.
Right.
In my little teeny tiny car. Me and my friend from high school went on a little road trip up to Queensland. And I just I didn't really know exactly, but I just knew I wanted to work, make money and travel. And so that's what I did. I would work. My parents owned a pet shop and they'd had that since I was 5 years old. So I could work there on Thursday nights and Saturdays. And when I finished high school, I could work there more and I could save up money and then I could go on my little trips and fly to Melbourne and visit my cousins. And then my first big trip was to New Zealand, which I had secretly planned. And
Obviously people know about it now. Because
well, it was secret at the time.
It was a secret
at the time.
I want to hear
It's
about
out
the
now.
pet shop. I want to hear about that. Tell us what that is like, being in a pet store.
Well, as a 5-year-old, when your parents buy a pet shop, I thought it was the most exciting thing in the whole world.
Because puppies.
And even, do you know what I was most excited about? Was you can get little dog biscuits and they're covered with chocolate. It's carob
Yeah. Yes.
I would take them and I would eat all the chocolate.
Do they know this?
Without any influence of your siblings.
No.
Do they know this now?
Choice.
This was my playhouse. This was my I was a kid in a candy shop, literally.
Dog
except
candy.
it was dog candy.
Do you
And
say
I would
sorry to
try.
your parents right now?
I'm pretty sure they know. They were as long as I was happy, they probably thought that's fine.
Yeah.
I tried all the different things. I tried fish flakes. I tried birdseed. I played with the animals too, but I thought it was fascinating to try all the different foods. Takes you back to when I would try bits of fish that my
Yeah, I think there's a
siblings threw to
connection
me.
there.
So and I still love food.
Mm-hmm.
Different, a bit more mature taste now.
That's good.
But I've always been experimental when it comes to food.
Right.
But no, the pet shop was great, and we would take the puppies home on the weekends, and I learned about customer service. I would serve customers. It was good. I really liked it. My brother and sister worked there too. So.
Did the novelty wear off of being surrounded by all those pets?
Yes.
Yeah.
It did. And now I have no pets. And my daughter, who's 5, desperately wants a dog, and I just kind of smile and change the subject because it's to me, it's they're great and I can see the benefit of having a dog, but there's a lot of work as well. And I remember I guess we had it for 20 odd years and it was non-stop. So you'd be at work and then the puppies would be at home, and then you'd be at work, and then it was not just one puppy,
Yeah.
5, 10 puppies, and so it was yes, and the novelty has worn off. Although I did grow up with my own dog, and that was amazing.
Okay.
But
What about the other animals? Turtles, snakes?
we didn't have snakes. We had turtles. We had I had my own hermit crab. So I would pick a pet every now and again and bring it home. So I had a hermit crab that was called Curly Kermit the Ugly Hermit.
Right.
He
name.
didn't last very long
With that
because
name.
apparently you need to feed them.
Oh.
I had birds. Got them from the pet shop. I can't remember what else we had. Oh, we had fish. We had all the things. So I got to have lots of different pets at different times. We got our cat, Ashley, came from the pet shop. Yeah.
Yeah. But you wanted to travel, and that was a big, so having a pet does limit that a bit. So
Yes.
tell us about some of your travels, especially in those early days.
So I ended up managing one of my parents' pet shops. I ended up having kind of 2 or 3 at different times in Adelaide. So I ended up managing one of them. And I just kind of remember thinking this is not my path. I don't want to go to work every day. And I remember driving to work and just there's a song called Pete Murrie Opportunity. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I would play that and I'd be like, yes, I can do this, I just wanted that freedom. But I guess there's something tied in with family businesses and feeling that there's the pressure to be, to be part of it. And so I remember putting in my resignation and traveling. I bought a ticket. I got a ticket to go over to Europe. And yeah, it was a big
Big deal.
deal. And yeah, but I did it. Like, I just kind of knew I had to do it.
Well done.
Actually, my first trip, though, was New Zealand. And
Okay,
that
we'll
was-
come back after
Yeah.
the break because that was the secret surprise trip.
I know.
So okay, we'll be back straight after this Life Burst chat with Amelia here with Matt and Sarah. This is Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. We're chatting with Amelia, and she's about to tell us about her secret trip that she was secretly planning that nobody knew about until she left. Is that
Secret's
right?
No, well, I had a boyfriend at the time.
Oh, so he knew about
And no,
it.
he didn't.
Oh,
That
he
was
didn't
why it was a
either.
secret.
Ah.
All I remember,
Oh.
it wasn't intentionally a secret. I just had a, like back then you kind of had a little brochure, back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a little brochure about New Zealand, and I was like, yep, that's where I'm going. And I remember having it hidden in my room. And because I'd have to break up with him to go, which was fine.
Okay.
That was a good, yeah. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a massive secret. It was just a secret from.
So this is the first
Your
big
boyfriend.
trip though. First overseas big trip.
So that was my first overseas big trip. I did a lot of traveling in Australia, and I was in Darwin just before that. And that was perfect actually, because I met this amazing girl and we decided we'd go to New Zealand together.
Okay.
Lovely.
So that's what we did, and we're still friends now.
Nice.
So yeah.
So it was a life of adventure.
Yes.
Back to work and earn some money, but then out on
Yeah,
adventures.
and we went skydiving and all the things you do when you're young and you just do not think harm is ever going to come your way. So we did all the things, whitewater rafting, and it was just such a good holiday. I just loved it. We got a little tiny car, like this, literally the smallest car. And we travelled around I would just drive anywhere, up mountains. We climbed a volcano with our thongs on, flip-flops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone else is wearing like hiking boots, and we're like, but we were young, free, doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's right. Getting that
So
vibe.
yeah, that was really good, and that gave me a taste for more travel. And I knew that if I wanted to go and do my overseas trip and have a 2-year visa, I had to do that before I was 28. So that was my next thing. So I worked again in between, but not in the family business.
All right.
I got a job at Trims. You remember the good old Trims?
Yeah.
Retail.
Retail. Yes, I stuck to retail, and then this is an interesting story. So I had a customer come in and he would order boxes of white gloves, and I was always intrigued, and I would talk to him like, why are you getting all these white gloves? And he said, well, they're for my staff. And I said, what do you do? And he said, I work at a funeral home and they wear them, for working on funerals. And I was like,
Okay.
funeral home. And then my head just went click.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want to sell suits anymore. I don't want to sell travel wear anymore. I don't want to do this kind of retail anymore. And so I sent my resume out to literally every funeral home in Adelaide until I got a job
Wow.
at a funeral home.
Okay.
And that's what I did for a few years.
Okay, you're gonna have to. There's lots. Yeah, I don't think we've ever had anybody come in here and be like, "Yeah, I just decided I was gonna work at a
That's
funeral
kind of
home."
how I worked. I was
With
like,
the
if something
gloves.
gets into, it was the gloves. Although I didn't wear gloves at mine, so
Oh,
it was
that's
a different one. Yeah.
So what were some of the roles you had to play in
Yeah.
the funeral home? I guess there's a few different roles in conducting.
So
funeral directors.
so I was very naive.
Mhm.
I thought that working in a funeral home meant that you just sat behind a desk and you maybe help people arrange funerals and that kind of thing. And my job title when I got my job was funeral director's assistant. So I thought, okay, that's what I'll be doing.
Make the coffee.
Yeah, just assistant type jobs. No.
Right.
I was right in it. So we were in work, but I was basically working in the biggest central mortuary in Adelaide,
Okay.
one of the funeral homes.
Right.
And so my job was to basically drive around and we would do transfer of deceased.
So you picked up dead bodies.
Yes, and I'm quite a sensitive person, and going into that role was quite a shock because I wasn't expecting it. But I ended up really enjoying it because I liked the depth of it, and I liked because we'd go into family homes, we'd go into nursing homes, hospitals, And I really liked, because I'd studied counselling and I really liked kind of connecting with people. What I liked about it was the connecting with the family and being there at that time and kind of, you know, just navigating that. And again, like just being able to offer comfort in that kind of, it's just a very unusual time for people.
It's a really important time.
Yeah, because
really important role in that time.
That's right, because often we might be the first or second people there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I got a lot from that job.
Do you remember the first time that you had to go to a hospital or a nursing home and pick up a deceased person? And how did that feel?
Well, the first, it was full on. I guess I got a bit of training in the actual, you know, in my workplace of kind of like I got to see the bodies, and that was the first time I'd really seen a body.
And how was that to see it?
I almost fainted, I think, just because the energy of it, you know. And
what do you mean the energy?
Well, I think I pick up on energy, like, you know, and because it's like opening a door that can never be, it's like once you see something, you can never unsee it.
Yeah, okay.
And the first, I think it was like 2 weeks in, a girl that I used to work with actually passed away. And I didn't really understand. I didn't really know. I looked at her and I remember looking at her for a long time, because we would also take, when people were ready for their funeral, we would take the coffin to the funeral home that it was ready for.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at her for a long time thinking there was something, I don't know, something about her just made me connect. And I was watching, and then that same moment I was at work and I got a message from my friend saying our friend had passed away.
Wow.
Because it had been a long time, and it's like another world in there, and I didn't make the connection looking.
That was her.
It was her, and
wow.
that's why. And when that happened, that was like a lot of kind of grieving, just because not necessarily that. Yeah, it was just those kind of things, and they were really good at my work because they're used to, you know, us having different emotional reactions to things. So there's a lot of support for me when that happened, and a lot of other things that, it took a while to kind of, even though it was one of my most fulfilling jobs, it took a long time to recover from
Would have been
all the things that I experienced in that job.
Yeah,
Yes.
wow. Oh, thanks for sharing about that. That's a difficult thing, but you stuck at it and you saw the value in it. So you continued that for a number of years.
So I went there, yes, I worked there, and then I actually went overseas, and then I came back and worked there again.
okay.
And then decided that when I was going to be a mother, that I could not work there anymore. So that was the end. That was literally the last job I had before I decided that I wasn't going to be working for a boss anymore.
Yes, and a very heavy and emotional job.
Yes.
At that, seeing dead bodies.
But just
all
to
the time.
balance, yes, well, that's right. And it became the norm, and like I said, opening it up to something else. So I suddenly was looking at life in a completely different way. Like, so it kind of took away another layer of innocence of, like, you know, we see life in a certain way, and we've kind of like, oh, you know, we go to the shops, and then we have a house, and we have this, and da-da-da. And it's like, that's often a whole area, especially in our kind of society, and that we just don't think about.
No, we're not good at talking about it.
We're not good at talking about it. It's kind of hidden, and so kind of stepping right into it is, it's unusual. But to balance that out, before I travelled, I thought I want to go and just make a quick bit of money. So I spent 6 months working at the casino as a cocktail waitress.
That is so different right
Just
now.
to
That is so different.
So I thought I would just like swap it out a bit.
Yeah.
So I did the casino
Right, I suppose you got to,
for 6 months
Try
in
and-
the middle of that.
yeah.
Mm.
Okay, we'll be back with more. Just gone from morgues to casinos.
Yeah.
That's live. Let's just say that. We'll be back with more Life First straight after this. This is Life Best with Matt and Sarah. We're chatting with Amelia, and we're at the part of the story where you meet a man called Matthew. To clarify, not this Matt, Matthew.
We met today.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
That's right.
Back a bit further.
Yes, back 10 years.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years ago.
Okay, how did you two meet each other?
So after working at the casino
Yeah.
for 6 months to earn some money, I went on my big overseas trip. I did a bit of travel around Europe, and then I went to London, and I knew that London wasn't the right place for me. Again, my intuition was just telling me that it wasn't, just things weren't working there for me. I didn't really want to get a job. I didn't really want to find a place to live. And so I thought Scotland would be the place. For no reason, I didn't know anyone there. It was just a feeling in me. And so I booked a train ticket, and as soon as I did that, I knew that it was like the right thing for me. I booked like a couch surfer. Do you know what couch surfing is?
You sleep on someone else's couch?
Yeah,
Okay.
or in a room. Doesn't have to be a couch, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
basically like travelers and, like kind of younger people. Doesn't
Okay.
they kind of share their home, and you stay and hang out and maybe like help them out with housework or whatever. And so it's kind of an exchange.
Yeah.
It's a really great way to travel and meet people. So I booked a couch surfing for Scotland, Edinburgh. And yeah, so I was on the train on the way there, and it was just this feeling came over me. It was like I was going home. It was just beautiful, like all the rolling green hills and the little sheep, and like it was just so classic. And yeah, I got there, and have you been to Edinburgh?
No.
So they've got New Town and Old Town, and the New Town is not new. It's like 350 years old or something like that, if I'm correct. And the Old Town's like 1,000 something years old.
Yeah.
I'm not great with history, but that's kind of like their New Town, Old Town.
Okay.
So I was in Newtown. I started in Newtown, and I worked in this restaurant called the Dome, and it was like a big fancy restaurant where you wore your black and whites, and it was very fancy, and I hated it. But I met a beautiful girl there who was also Australian,
That's nice.
and within 2 weeks of meeting her, she left and got a job in Africa, and she said her house in the Old Town her bedroom in the Old Town was coming up for rent. Would I like to go over there and have a look? And I wasn't really liking where I was staying. I wasn't really liking my job. So I quit my job after 2 weeks and I hopped over to Old Town, and I went into this house, and I was like, this is it. It looked over, it was on the Golden Mile, which the castle was at the top of the Golden Mile. And then the Golden Mile is this beautiful, like, cobbled road, and we were on that. And I just knew it was the right thing. And then just around the corner was a beautiful little cafe called the Edinburgh Larder. And I walked around there and got a job. And maybe a few months, a year into working there, then Matt started working there, and that's where I met Matt. And he was a local Scottish boy.
Okay.
Came to chef at the cafe.
So it's love at first sight, just look across the cafe at each other.
No, he was tall and lanky and very laddish.
Okay.
And, 4.5 years my junior. Not that I knew that at the time, but I just kind of thought, oh, he seems nice. And I was traveling. It wasn't really a thing, but he was he was nice. I thought he was like genuinely a nice guy. And so we did start dating, but never really seriously. And I think I had about a year left overseas. And then when I came home, maybe a couple months later, he came to Australia, and we started our love affair
Okay.
again.
Okay.
So that was
Did he come back? Did he come to Australia
but he
because
didn't.
of you? Or
He says he came to travel, but he landed in Darwin and was not long till he was in Adelaide.
Right.
right? Okay.
We just kept falling back into each other's company. It was that kind of,
It's like it's meant to be, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Just couldn't get rid of each other.
Pretty cool. Yeah. So those running into you happened a bit more regularly as things went on?
Yeah, well, we did just get back together once he was in Adelaide, and we just kind of, my parents by then weren't in Adelaide. They were in Queensland near my brother. So we kind of lived in different little places and lived with friends, and then had babies, and that's history. No.
Yeah. Well,
I-
skip over that part.
There we go. We're at the end, everybody. No, I'm kidding. We're not at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, was there a choice in there for him to leave Scotland or to continue traveling?
Well, he never really was a big traveller.
Okay.
And I think when he came to Australia, he wasn't like, he didn't know that he would be here for, now going on 10 years. But he really loves it here. It's like his home. And we've been back twice to visit his family. They've been over 3 times, I think, to visit us. But I do love that he is Scottish and that Scotland is the place that we can hopefully, in this climate, that it's still somewhere that we can kind of go to as I know that he would love to live there again one day and kind of maybe in the Highlands or something like that. But yeah, I think that Australia for him, it really suits him. He likes the sun and he doesn't like the cold, which is unusual.
Right.
What about his parents then? When they've come over a few times, have they come over in summer or winter?
Well, they've come in both.
Okay.
But I remember when the last time his parents came, they came in, it was like literally one of those 40-degree hot spells.
Right. Yeah.
And they arrived about 10 o'clock at night and his dad was wearing a woolen jumper. And I was like, oh my God, you've got to take that jumper off. And we just moved into a new house. We had no air conditioning. And his parents were just like, the day after they arrived, jet lagged and everything, his mum's like, we need to buy. So they went out and bought those like little air conditioners that sit on the floor, and they had one in their room just constantly on.
Yeah.
And they've come in winter, which is pretty much just like their summer, and they loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shorts and t-shirts.
Yes, but I definitely prefer Scottish summer, even though the sun doesn't go down till about 11 o'clock.
Is that because the sun doesn't go down to 10, 11?
No. I mean, when you're young, it's good, but when you're older, and because I took the children there, trying to get them to bed, it's very like mum thing to say, but like trying to get children to bed when the sun is shining still at 9, 10 o'clock is tricky. But it's still like, it's like you can actually go out in the day. We've been in winter as well, and that's when Adie was learning to walk and she was just falling over in the snow constantly, little blue hands. And I'm like, I do not know how parents bring children up in Scotland. I couldn't do it, and I like the sun too much. So yeah, it's good to have both, both countries as a
That's
option.
Good. Yeah. So you mentioned the kids. How has having the kids changed life for you as for all those adventures you've done? It sounds like you've been able to take them on some of them.
Yes.
But, has life changed a bit?
Well, yeah, and I was definitely ready to be a mum because I had all my adventures, and I knew, so I was 33 when I had 80, so I was well and truly ready to kind of settle a little bit and kind of, become a bit more like home body style. And so I really was looking forward to becoming a mum. It wasn't like a surprise or anything. I was like really ready for it, and it's been amazing. And as you know, with children, it's one of the biggest learnings of your life. Like our children really do teach us. And I've found that I've had so much growth since becoming a mum, because my daughter is very similar to me. She's a Scorpio. She's fiery. Like I have that nature as well. And so I've, learned a lot from that relationship. And then having my little boy, he's 3, it's great. I mean, it's great. It's challenging. And it's kind of, I look back at life before children and think, man, I had so much time. I didn't realize how much time I had. But it makes the time I have now more special. Yeah. So, yeah.
Take that on board. I don't have children.
Yes. Yes.
I have lots of time.
It's like you never know that you don't know. And I mean, everyone's different and we all have different things, but I always say just enjoy your time,
That's lovely. We will be back with more Life Burst straight after this, chatting with Amelia, with Matt and Sarah. This is Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. We're chatting with Amelia, and we are now at the part of your life where you have children, you have Matthew, and you don't have a job at this stage. You're newly back in Australia. So what happened?
So when I got back, well, I'll just fast forward. I worked
Okay.
back at the funeral home when I came back because
Yes,
I
yes,
didn't,
that's
you
right.
know, they were there and I liked that work, so I did that. And then a few years later, well, a couple of years later, I was kind of wanting to become a mum. And this, even though it sounds dark, it's not actually, it's actually been a really like a big blessing in my life. But I was pregnant while I was working there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just happened that I miscarried that just early on. But I took that day off work, that first day, and then I just never went back.
Right.
And it was almost like a catalyst because it was kind of like, what choice do I want to make? Do I want to stay doing that? Because I never really would have quit if it was up to me, because it was, you know, regular job and there was no real reason for me to quit. And so it was like, took something bigger than me to actually say, what do you want? If you want to be a mum, what, you know, what do you want to create for your life? And so I decided that I wasn't going to do that. And I gave myself a few months. And in that time, I decided that if I was going to work for myself, I better do something. So I started a photography business.
Right.
And I just kind of, I always loved photography. I never had really studied it properly. So I decided to do a year online course. And I was scared because a lot of girls that were doing photography my age had been doing it for 10 years out of high school. And I was really worried that, you know, I looked at their work and I thought, how could I ever compare to what they're doing? And something kept saying to do it anyway. And I just took my initiative, and my friend was getting married and I spoke to her photographer and she said, if you want, come along with me and just be my second photographer and see how you go. So I got a secondhand camera. I did some photography for her. She really liked what I did. I just had a natural ability to take candid photos and kind of capture moments, even though I wasn't very technically minded. It was just, I was really good at just reading the, you know, the kind of what was happening. And so instead of then comparing myself to other people, I found my niche. Like I found what really worked for me, and that's how I created my business. So yeah, that was what I did. And then I had 80 and I kind of overworked because as a photographer, there's a lot of editing. So instead of resting as a new mum, I spent many hours editing. So I loved it, but I was exhausted. And so I kept doing that for a while, and just, you know, like photography was always there. And I kind of balanced my energy between motherhood and photography. And yeah, and then coming up like about a year ago, just as the kind of whole COVID thing happened in Adelaide, I thought, what better time than to start a second business?
Right. Yes.
And so I kind of just in my mind, just this business idea came in, and I just thought, well, I've done it once, I can do it again. And I started a second business where I would go to people's homes and help them declutter and create beautiful spaces, as you might remember.
Yeah.
And that was really, I really liked that, you know, just having something a bit different and, you know, being face to face with people. And that worked well because I could go and then come back and I didn't have more work to do. So I did that.
Yeah.
How did you find that, going into someone else's space, someone else's house, and telling them what to do and what not to do?
Well, I think I loved it because I love going into people's homes and just, I can look and I think I can just see how it would look really beautiful. And it's not like an interior design kind of structured thing. It's more like a feeling thing. So it was just something I did naturally. Like I always loved rearranging and decluttering and all that kind of thing. So mixing that with my experience of working with people in very different, unique situations, which I had in all my different, you know, jobs, it kind of, nothing surprised me, and I really loved the connection. So rather than, I didn't go in and kind of be like, oh, this is what we'll do. It was a process of connecting with them, finding out what they were needing and what they were wanting. And often it had nothing to do necessarily with the space, but they were wanting something more or something different in their life, and the space is a reflection of that. So I would kind of help them reach that goal by kind of helping them create the space so that they could then be free to do the thing that they were wanting to do.
Yeah.
Yes. And at some point, businesses merged together. How did that come about?
So in what way?
You merged everything.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
well I've merged 3 businesses now, and I
Yes.
have my soulful life.
Yes.
So
That's right.
Soulful Photography by Amelia Grace, and then My Soulful Home, My Soulful Space, and then Soulful Water Co. So then I decided that I wanted more time with my children. I didn't want to keep going to work to create income, because the more income I want, the more time I have to spend away. But really my main value is to be present at home with my children, because I want to homeschool them. And so I want to do something meaningful, but I don't always want to be away from home. So I decided to work online, and so I got an online business that's totally different. And it's to do, like, you know, our product is water, and it's automated, and it's something that I can kind of bring everything that I've learned from my past into this business. And it means that my other 2 businesses get to be fun rather than having to be my money makers.
Yeah.
So it takes the stress out of them. It means that they can just be what I do as, like, you know, to kind of bring me joy.
Yeah.
And this business then, it also brings me joy, but it has the potential for me to actually earn the money without going out of the home
Yeah.
and doing it.
right.
So I get to work around the children. So I kind of organically, they've all combined, because I guess they're all me, you know, like the water business is essentially it's about having an online brand, like a personal brand. And so because I've created that with 2 other businesses, in fact, doing these businesses helped those, because it's given me a lot of training on how to run businesses. So it's actually brought it all together
Yes, that's right.
really beautifully.
And what's it like homeschooling in the last few minutes we have left of our interview?
Well, it's only just began.
Okay.
And my homeschooling, kind of like the way I think about it, is just to follow the children's lead. So for me, it's just about ease, and it's about allowing the children to just be children, and, you know, letting them have days of rest, letting them have days of being with friends. And if they're showing interest in something, then just helping them to kind of navigate that and to do that. So, I mean, right now it's very early days, because I've got a 5 and a 3-year-old. So they're still just babies, you know, like,
Yeah.
and Adie's learning to read and write. She just does that herself. And I just kind of we just read lots of books, do lots of colouring in, whatever they're interested in. So I let them lead. And again, it's like with most things, I just follow my intuition. I don't worry too much about what the future is going to be like. I just know that it suits us now.
That's fantastic. Well, you've certainly lived a very full
Yes,
and
yeah.
colourful, varied, adventurous life, and lots of things you've thrown in there. As you look back on all of that, as you've shared, if you had one piece of advice that you might offer to whoever's listening or watching today, what might that advice be?
I think my advice would be to always, to know the difference between your intuition, following your intuition, and stopping yourself because of fear. So sometimes we don't do something because there's something very scary about it, but actually we know we want to do it. And sometimes it's just not the right path. So learning what that is and trying to always follow what feels right, even if it's a little bit scary. And if you know something's wrong, you can always change your mind and go back to the path, because it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. Like, we all have a unique journey, and we're all meant to be doing different things, and I think it's all unfolding perfectly for each of us. So just keep following the little bits of guidance, or the little intuitions, or the gut feelings. And even if it doesn't make sense, just see what happens.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Thank you for spending this time with us and sharing your story.
Oh, that's fine. And, thank you for having me. It's been really lovely. I love talking to you guys.
Pleasure.
Aw, look
Great
at
to hear
that.
your story.
I think it makes great leeway that if you want to be like Amelia and, come join us and share your story, because considering it's just so relaxed and chilled out, you can get in contact with us. We'd love to hear from you. But this has been Life Burst. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Matt. Thank you again so much for joining us.
And you can catch up with us wherever you get your podcast from, and on YouTube, Facebook, and all those other places you mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah.
We'll
Great to have you with us.
See you next time.
Life Bursts is hosted by Matthew Karat and Sarah Freeman, with production by Reese Jarrett and Kay Hoshraw Ozadigan. For more episodes of Life Bursts, go to rawcut.com.au. This is a RawCut production.